Welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who currently regrets buying that ostrich farm. It's Todd Liebenow.
Ostrich burgers are actually very tasty. My wife, the region she grew up in, they were a lot of ostrich farms in that area right around the time we got married. And I remember you could just throw a rock and hit a place that was serving ostrich burgers, and they're quite good.
Oh, wow. So this really tied in. I like it. The only reason I brought that up is because in Tremors 2, let's see, what's the name of Tremors? Tremors 2, the name of that movie is...
Aftershocks,
Yeah,
I think.
Aftershocks. He lost all of his money. Fred Ward lost all of his money. Earl on an ostrich farm.
Yeah.
And then in Eight-Legged Freaks, the mayor lost money on an ostrich farm as well, which is another creature feature.
See, I heard it was going to be the meat of the future, and that was right about the time those movies were made. So I don't know. I guess not. I mean, in the region I live in now, the beef substitute is bison. They go, for the buffalo meat out here more than the ostrich meat, and that's quite tasty too.
Oh yeah, I mean more of it, right?
Yeah.
Bison though, that'd be tougher for like a spider or a tremor or a graboid to take down. Ostriches seem like easy prey.
They'd put up more of a fight, I think. I mean, because, every time you go to a national park, there's signs up that say, don't get anywhere near the bison because basically they'll kill you.
Yeah. They will flip your car.
Yeah.
No, but this, no, thank you for, so I was a guest on your Forgotten Filmcast. We talked about Knight Riders. I mean, anything Romero I'm going to talk about. So I love that you brought me on there. And I also saw that you talked about Trespass recently.
Yes.
Does that hold up? Because I need to listen to that. I want to watch it and then listen to your episode because someone brought it up the other day to me and I had totally forgotten it, which is perfect for your podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say if it holds up because that was my first time watching it, and I had a lot of fun with it. I love it when Walter Hill gets weird on you. I love like The Warriors and Streets of Fire, and Trespass kind of falls into that same kind of category. But the weirdest thing about Trespass is that it's written by the guys who wrote Back to the Future.
Whoa.
Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, and I guess it was like an early script that they did, and then they twisted it around a bit for, kind of the 90s hip hop feel, put Ice-T and Ice Cube in there. And I'm like, how did this come out of the same team that gave us Back to the Future? It just seems kind of strange.
Wow. And Dennis Leary's the villain, correct?
No. Trespass.
Trespass is... Judgment Night is the other one with Stephen Dorff.
Yeah.
And Emilio Estevez. And...
This is the one where you've got Bill Paxton and William Sadler, and they're, kind of on one side, and then you've got Ice Cube and Ice-T on the other side, and it's this showdown in a burnt out warehouse in East St. Louis, Illinois, and, gritty 90s fun.
I confuse that with Judgment Night, where Dennis Leary's the villain and he's hunting Emilio Estevez and Cuba Gooding Jr. And
yeah, I know which one you're talking about. I don't think I've seen that one either. So yeah, now I got to go look for that one.
I got to watch Trust Me. Hey, and also, is Swing Shift still available for your Forgotten Filmcast?
We have not done Swing Shift yet. It's one that I've had on my list for a while here, and I know you're big on Kurt Russell, so that's certainly one. I mean, that's the one where Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn hooked up, and it's directed by Jonathan Demme, and it's another one I've never seen that is one that I hear mixed things about because people say it's not really a true Demme film. I guess I don't know if there were behind the scenes issues or what was going on there. I've heard all kinds of stories, but Jonathan Demme directed it, and I mean, from what I've heard, there's kind of mixed feelings about it because some people say it's kind of not like a true Jonathan Demme film, not quite like his other stuff. And, there might have been behind the scenes problems, things like that. But, I'm curious about it. That's the thing. I'm all about checking out those things that nobody talks about anymore.
Well, later on down the line, if that's still available, I'd love to come back on your show and talk about that because it's Kurt Russell.
Oh, absolutely.
Got to talk.
We'll have to just kind of set it aside for you, I guess.
I love it. That'd be awesome. And then, so I have another question for you. All right. So as the series has progressed, and I know that you recently did a rewatch of some of the later Tremors films, do you like the graboids when they were mysterious, where they either came from space, like radiation, or a government conspiracy and we never know? Or do you like knowing that graboids are hatched by eggs left by ass blasters?
Yeah.
And then those eggs become dirt dragons, and then they metamorphosize into 3 to 6 shriekers, which spit a cocoon each, and those become clones. And when they become 3 days old, they molt into ass blasters who start the cycle again. Do you like the mystery, or do you like knowing where these things come from?
I like the mystery. I mean, the whole evolutionary process of these things got a little bit ridiculous. I mean, I didn't go into this, necessarily intending to watch all the movies, but I was like, okay, I got to rewatch the first Tremors. I love the movie, but it's been many years since I've seen it. And I found a copy at the used DVD shop, and it was the first 4 movies. So I was like, well, what the heck? I'll buy the box set here. And then I found the 5th one at the library, and the 6th one is on Netflix, so I watched them all. But yeah, I think it's more fun when there's mystery about it, because it does start to get a little bit ridiculous. The Shriekers I was kind of okay with. I was like, all right, they're kind of cool. But yeah, the flying version that has fire coming out of their rear end, that was getting a little too ridiculous for me.
Yeah, it kind of completed the cycle of it. I don't like it. I like the mystery that is created in the first Tremors, and I like that they purposely just didn't explain any of it. I mean,
that's the key to great movie monsters, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about like King Kong, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and whatever, you don't want too much backstory. You just want the monster.
Because how have they been feeding? Where have they been? It's just
how have they stayed a mystery all these years? Yeah, exactly.
And they haven't been picked up the 3 years prior when the machinery was laid in there. I just love. All right, so you hadn't watched this in many years. What were your thoughts about it watching it again after a long time not viewing it?
Oh, it took me back to when I saw it the first time. I mean, the first one is just so much fun.
Yeah.
I remember going to see it in the theater, and it was one of those cases where I was not that interested in seeing it. My friend, who I always went to the movies with, he was like, well, let's go see Tremors. I was like, really? The Kevin Bacon with giant worms? It seems like Bacon's slumming it here. What? I don't really want to see that. But we went and saw it, and it was just so great. It's kind of like, I mean, it's one of the first movies of the 90s, because it was released in, I think, January of 1990. But, I look at it and go, well, here's like the last great movie of the 80s, really, because it's only missing it by a few weeks. So, yeah, it's a true, fun monster movie, in all the ways that monster movies are great and silly. This kind of just captures that feel that you get in so many older monster movies, from the 50s or whatever. You get giant things roaming around the desert or whatever. Well, that's what you got here, but they're just underground, and it's wild fun.
The original title for this was Land Sharks.
I did see that. Yeah. Were they going to get Chevy Chase to play the graboid, I guess?
Isn't that crazy? Land Sharks. I mean, I love shark movies, but I love how this movie evolved too. This went through quite an evolution process. Did you on the DVD you have? Did it have that behind the scenes documentary on there?
No, I don't think so. I think it was a pretty bare bones DVD that I had there. But I did see a few things on like YouTube and stuff, just because after you watch the movie, you're curious about various things there, and there were all kinds of things I hadn't even really thought about with this film. I'd never thought to look too in depth about like who the writers were and things like that. And I'm like, these guys wrote a lot of stuff. These guys wrote Short Circuit and Short Circuit 2. They wrote Batteries Not Included. So yeah, they're good in my book.
They were big names when they kind of signed on. They had some cred going on. And I also thought Ron Underwood did a really good job directing this film. And I think the reason 30 years later it looks so good is I watched this behind the scenes documentary, and I learned about all the practical effects that they had. Like, they would build trenches in the ground, and then they would put a buoy that you normally put in the sea, attach it to a chain, then they would cover it with a bunch of dirt and pull it to make it seem like the graboids were moving through the ground. The scene with the jackhammer, there was loose asphalt. And also I love when it attacks Bert and Reba. I love Reba in this movie. She's so cool. She is so cool in this movie.
Yeah, and I'm sad she doesn't show up in any of the other films, to be honest with you.
I love her in this movie. But when it attacks and then it lifts its head and it knocks out the ceiling, you probably know this, but that was a puppet. Like, they filmed. Yeah. That was just a miniature. And all the matte paintings, it felt this, I don't know, but you watch it again and this movie doesn't look 30 years old. Some movies look 30 years old. This does not. This is aged really well. Tremors.
It has it's shot really well. I mean, it's a lot of these shots of, just desolate desert, mountains, rocks and things like that. But they capture them in a really kind of intriguing way. And I don't know that the following films do as good a job, but I mean, from the standpoint of the cinematography and such, I mean, it's a very well produced film for a film that's a B-grade monster movie that they slotted for release in January of 1990. This is a heck of a lot better movie than it has any right to be.
Oh, for sure. And the production design by Ivo Cristante, like they built that entire town in 2 months. Like in the middle of nowhere, they just built that thing. And I had, it's funny, I had never thought about that. It's a good looking town that they built. And I liked that, the convenience store that they were on, they built it on a big like gimbal, so it could collapse and move back up. So they could just drop it and then pick it back up. So, I mean, this is a really, I don't know, I loved all the gags and, oh man. And then they talked about making the miniatures, and this guy said he sat somewhere like making a miniature for 2 weeks, just painting a tiny desk to make it seem to scale in Gummer's basement. So, I mean, it's cool.
That's the thing. I saw some behind the scenes footage where they're showing like, them filming the graboid bursting through the wall in Bert's basement. And it's a miniature, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I never would have known. It looks so believable. I had assumed that they made an actual big puppet of the thing. And when you're talking about the town, yeah, I mean, the town is actually quite believable for a small little town like that. I actually have had to make several trips into the mountains of Colorado here where I live this fall, and stopped in this little town where I have to drop off the person that I'm transporting, and it looks a heck of a lot like this little town does. I'm going, boy, I should probably be watching out for graboids here. It's just it feels like the real thing.
Has that movie ever done that to you? So I watched Dawn of the Dead, right? And whenever I walk through a mall, I'm like, how would I fortify this? When I'm in the water, I always look underneath me. And I've done that before where I've been hiking or somewhere similar. And a graboid, I know it's not going to come out of the ground, but you get that thought from this movie. And I think it's sort of ingrained in a lot of people that way. Like, oh, yeah. People love graboids.
Every time I go out on some kind of hike here in Colorado, I don't do the too terribly rugged stuff, but I'll go out, to one of our state parks or things like that. You've always got rock formations and things like that. And this movie always pops into my head every single time. You spot a big rock and you go, well, that's where I'm running if a graboid shows up,
Well, I'd be able to pole vault if I'm stuck on these rocks.
That is such a wonderful sequence in this movie.
And I guess getting into the movie, have you ever seen a movie where, I mean, people get wiped out, the doctor and his family, people die brutally in this film, but all throughout you're smiling. There's a lot of harmonica on the score, which is kind of weird. I don't know how I picked that up, but it's a very joyful movie where a lot of people die. It's a tonal balancing act, but I think they do it really well.
Well, yeah, the movie does have a good sense of humor to it, and so, I mean, even when you have these moments that are a little bit more gruesome, it's hard to really sink totally into the doldrums there because, it is such a joyous film. But some of the deaths, I do kind of, I mean, like Victor Wong especially. I mean, Victor Wong's so wonderful, but it's like you hate to see Victor Wong die. I mean, from the beginning of the movie, you kind of know, well, he's going to die, but you're like, no, it's Victor Wong. Come on.
I love his brief scenes with Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon when he buys the graboid tongue, I guess, off of them for $15. Yes. But I love the shakedown scene because at first he's, Kevin Bacon says 20, he says 10. Then I like when Fred Ward jumps to the side and says 15, and Victor Wong is like, all right, I admit defeat. It was a fun, it was I think this movie also had some really good character actors that they brought in. It was a strong all-around cast to it. And I think they gelled pretty well.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things I really like too is I think all these actors do a great job of bringing these characters to life, and they don't belittle them. I mean, these are the type of characters